Okay, so hello and a warm welcome to today's podcast episode. So I am joined again by the lovely Anna Ryan. Anna is a good friend of mine. She's also my Pilates teacher and an all-round fabulous human being. And Anna joined me on a podcast before, and we just had this random idea that Anna was going to interview me, and it just went well and it flowed so well that we decided that we would do another one. So today's podcast is going to be on public speaking, and it's going to be maybe more of a conversation as well as an interview, but we're just going to kind of go with the flow. We've had a couple of questions come through from the audience already, which we're going to answer here today, and then just talk about public speaking in general. So anything from you, Anna, before you start? Did you want to just do like a little bit of a reintroduction to the audience so people can remember who you are?
Yeah, we know each other obviously through Pilates and other things as well. I wouldn't say I've got any sort of speciality in particular. I think I'm sort of do a mixture of things, background in pharmaceuticals but mostly health and wellness and sort of fitness. But at the moment, I'm just specialised or focusing on Pilates.
Amazing. And you've done some public speaking courses recently as well, haven't you? So it's been really topical for us.
Yeah, I think it's been a very interesting conversation, which we're going to get into. It's something that in some aspects I'm very confident in speaking, and others I'm an introvert. So yeah, we can get into that. So yeah, it's fascinating learning and just meeting different people and they're discovering their challenges and what they're very, very good at for speaking. So yeah, perfect timing this.
Amazing. Right. Well, shall we dive in with the questions we've been asked by listeners? Um, so the first question, I'm looking at them on my phone for those who are on the audio, and I just scrolled too far to the right to a picture of a dog. I was like, that's not the question for today. Um,
Although they like
okay,
to express their voices, don't they, dogs?
they do. They probably have a lot to say on the matter. So the first question was how to overcome or deal with nerves. I imagine you have some excellent tips on how to calm nerves and get into a different headspace with positive thinking. Okay, so this is one that I'm going to mention TEDx here, but this is kind of relevant to, and do feel free to chip in, Anna. This is one that I feel is quite relevant to like other public speaking things that I have done. Um, so TEDx was extremely nerve-wracking for me. There was 23,000 people watching, both in the room and online. And the thing that really got me through that was by tapping into firstly my strengths and actually how could I how could I tap into being the best version of myself on that stage? Like what would be like the quickest way to my confidence? And secondly, it was like, this is bigger than me. So it's not bigger than me in terms of a lot of us, we've been in that kind of over empathy place before where actually it's all about everyone else and not us. It's not that space, but it's kind of navigating this space of like, actually, this message needs to be heard. So the outcome is the message needs to be heard. There's people out there that need my help, and the message needs to be heard. So actually, it is bigger than me and my nerves because the message needs to get out there. So whatever it takes to get that confidence, to get those words out, and to have that message portrayed, like that is the big outcome. And when I look at like little old me with my nerves over here, that's not to discredit me, but actually it's like it is bigger than me. So how do I, and that's not like to bring myself out of that big picture, but it's how do I then be my best self because it is bigger than me. And then something I looked at before I did TEDx was my strengths profile. And one of the things that is in there is growth. And it was somebody that said to me, um, they somebody that picked up like the competitive piece. They said, wow, like there were 400 applicants. You must be so competitive that you got through to those finalists for that day and you got on stage. And I said to them, I'm not competitive at all. I had no thought about anyone else that was there. I didn't think I was competing against anyone. My mindset the whole way through was my strength of growth. And it was, how can I be that best version of me to get on that stage? And obviously being on that stage was being that best version of me as well, because I'd always looked at, like, back when I started my corporate job in 2000 and when was that, 2004. I remember looking up at the trainers and the coaches and going, wow, I want to be up there one day. I want to be teaching and training and coaching. So that had always been like my trajectory of, that's a hard word to say, that trajectory towards that highest version of me was always being on that stage. So it was like, it was growth for me. And then it was also tapping into that strength and value of like, wow, if I can get myself on that stage and be confident, that's going to help others to grow. My message, like little old me sharing that message, going out to 23,000 people, the growth and the ripples that's going to have. And I mean, I had feedback afterwards saying people had implemented what I talked about, like with their families and things. So it's like, it's bigger than me. And how do I be that best version of me, like for that mission? And when you look at it from that big perspective of like, this is the mission, it goes beyond the nerves. So I hope that answers that question. Because I think specifically people want the answer to be like, give me tips about overcoming nerves. Whereas this is, I'm almost going here, we're not going to specifically look at nerves. Like, we can talk about anxiety, we can talk about mindfulness, like there's so many things there that can help. But actually, when we zoom out of that detail into like, this is bigger than all that, it just shifts and changes everything. So for those listening, what I want to say is like, how can you do that? How can you zoom out of that detail of you being nervous and it being about you into, there's a bigger picture, there's a bigger mission, there's a bigger message here that needs to be heard, and it is bigger than me. And once we get into that space of bigness, for want of a better word, there's just like, I mean, yes, I was still nervous, but it didn't matter. And that was kind of part of being human anyway. It didn't matter because the message came out, the message got across, the message was heard.
Yeah, I like what you said about identifying the emotions, because I think one person will define it as nerves and one person will define it as anxiety, but it's embracing what those emotions are and just going, it's okay to feel like that. But also, like what you were saying, you're saying, why do you want to do this? And also, it's a lot bigger than you. But what I loved about it is you were here in the audience looking at those speakers and going, oh, I want to be up there. And then you're up on stage, and then I'm sure there's someone that was back where you were. And how inspiring is that? Like, someone on stage has inspired you to do that, and then you're inspiring. And it's always like looking ahead, who's ahead of you on that sort of journey, so to speak. That's that controversial word, but experience. And that's really lovely that someone inspired you to do it, and then you've done it, and then you're inspiring other people to do it. Yeah, that's really nice.
Definitely. Yeah, it's public speaking is like, I've included it in a lot of my courses and programs as well, because I feel like I know that there are people out there that will do that will be like, wow, I want to do that. How did you do that? And especially when they hear, they're like, I'm autistic, I'm sensitive, I'm an introvert. You picked up on the introvert piece earlier. Like, I'm all these things where, we could very easily be told, like, how often, like, does it feel like being an introvert that you're told that you can't do these things? You shouldn't be a speaker. You shouldn't be a trainer because you're an introvert. But actually, like, what you bring and the authenticity that you bring to that space, like, it's so inspiring when you see someone else do it who you resonate with.
Yeah. And I think it's what I learned on the course. You were saying, when people say they want to speak, I think people have different interpretations of what actually speaking is. Like, you can speak and at a wedding and do a speech. That could be a reading, a funeral or a christening. That's speaking. And then you and I have both been in corporate land and we've done presentations, and that's a completely different speaking. I think what I learned, that's why I went on these courses, is in those environments I've got the experience, so I'm a little bit rusty in some of the things, but I'm not as nervous. If you said to me, Anna, you've got 10 minutes, I want you to talk about yourself. Oh, and I think it's being aware of where people are nervous and where their skills are. So on some hands, I'm okay, need to brush up on it. But yeah, that would fill me with dread. That's what I'm working on at the moment, being able to just speak. So I think when you see people on, you know, stages and they don't have any cards, any presentation, they're just talking, I think that's a real skill which takes practice. I know one of the things I learned on the course that if nerves do get the better of people, they teach them to slow their breathing down and slow their voices down, because sometimes people talk very, very, very quickly because obviously the emotions and the nerves and then ums and ers and ums and ers, and then they can hear the ums and ers, and then it fuels it even more. And I found that really interesting, just because when you are speaking and you're not used to it, well, there, that was me thinking. People, yeah, things take away. I found that really interesting. I've just done ums again.
I
So
don't personally, unless someone's doing it all the time, I don't notice that. I was having a conversation with a friend about that the other day, and she
yeah,
said, "Oh, like, how do you not say ums and ers?" And I practice, but I still do it.
yeah,
I think I still do it, and I don't think it really matters. There was a guy at my TEDx event who actually forgot his talk,
bless
but
him.
um the like empathy in the audience and the support for him, and they were cheering him on. It was actually really lovely space.
Yeah,
And he did look at he was able to stop and look at his notes, and he did then remember it again. But people were just so much more engaged because there was like a real humanness about that. And I think
mm,
we try so hard to be like
mm,
so perfect in these things, and
mm,
actually when we show a bit of humanness, we actually probably connect with the audience better than, you know, standing up there in a suit looking like completely polished. I think a lot of us will resonate more with the humanness of it. And this is something that actually is a bit of a frustration in me in general, which the listeners might have heard me talk about before, which is that I think we forget that we're all humans and
mm,
we all have brains and we're all perfectly imperfect. Um, Yet so many things, and I know certainly for me in corporate, and I can imagine for you, especially in Big Pharma, like it's almost like people are numbers, and we kind of forget that people are people and people are human and people have brains.
mm,
And that kind of almost translates down into public speaking, where it's like, I have to be perfect, I have to be completely polished.
mm.
But actually, we don't. Like, who made that rule that it has to be absolutely perfect to get a message across and to, you know, to share something and to inspire somebody? Like, who made the rule that said it had to be perfect?
It's very, very, very true. I know. I've just, when you're talking about that, I was thinking all the blunders I've had in. I was in the pharmaceutical for 10 years, so we did lots of PowerPoint presentations, and you know, sometimes the projector wouldn't work.
Mm.
Or I remember once I was in a very, very small pharmacy around the back in their office, and it was tiny, not the ideal situation. So you know, they'd say, you know, you're talking, set the environment up, make sure it's lovely and spacious, and sometimes you just put in a room and off you go. And I tripped over the lead and landed on the floor. I was wearing a dress and heels, you know, your worst situation. But I just laughed it off and I said, well, I've done the worst thing I ever thought I would do. I've done it. Let's just keep going. Is everyone all right? I'm sorry if I flashed anybody. And you just, yeah, it's, you either cry. I probably cried later. Um, and yeah, you just go with it, don't you?
I have to share a funny story now, and she won't mind me sharing it at all. But lots of you already know my partner is a musician, and she was on stage at her album launch. And just before the album launch, we were talking about her being nervous about going on stage. And I said, well, to be honest, what's the worst that can happen? And she said, well, I could shit myself on stage. And and we were telling this to her mum, and her mum looked really horrified that we were having this conversation. And then in the little bit where she interacts with the audience, sort of in between the songs, and, you know, warms up the crowd and everything, she said, I was having a conversation before this about what's the worst thing I could do that would happen at this launch. And her mum sat there shaking her head, going, no, 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 no. She was like trying to stop her from saying it. And she looked at me and I was going, yeah, that's not a me. And she said it, and the audience just thought it was brilliant and were just laughing so hard. But her mum was like, you can't say that. But it's almost like, yeah, if you just go, actually, in reality, what is the worst that can happen? Like in your scenario, you tripped over.
Yeah.
Everyone's human, everyone trips over. And I think it just brings that humanness to it.
But also I think if people resonate with it, because they're like, if I was on stage, that'd be my worst fit, especially those platform stage where musicians or comedians are, because they are slightly higher, aren't they, to see a bigger audience. So I think people can relate to that, because they're like, well, actually, if they put themselves, like, if people do speak, they go, well, I've done that before, or that's my biggest concern. No, I think there's lots of compassion with things like that, but also I think it's very humble to be transparent and go, this is me, this is what happened, and people relate to that. I think there's a lot of people that do it very fake, and I think that's, social media has a lot to sort of answer for in that respect. But people that generally do it, I think they get deeper connection, and yeah, good for her.
Yeah.
Hope
And
it went well.
it did actually, and we can also look at what could be the best possible outcome. So this is something that I
Mm,
played with TEDx. It
mm,
was like, actually,
mm,
what's the worst that could happen? But actually, what's the best that could happen? And I
mm,
got really silly with playing with this, and it was in a coaching session I was having, and I said, I really want to look at, like, what is the best that could happen? How could we have the most crazy idea? And one of the things that we came up with was there could be a millionaire in the audience who saw my TEDx and wants to pay me millions of pounds to do that same talk all over the world. I was like, right, that is the best thing that could happen. And we
yeah.
really played with that. Like, what is the absolute best thing
Mhm,
that could happen? Which was amazing. And that leads me on to the TED question specifically. So I
mhm,
think this is a good time to answer that one, which was how to tailor and craft your content and subject specifically for a TED audience. So there's two things I want to talk about here. So I want to talk about the actual tailoring and crafting, and I want to talk about the energy behind this, because this is, I feel, both equally as important here. Um, so specifically, there is a book called Talk Like TED that is great. I can't remember the author's name, but it is a really great book. So I really recommend reading that for anyone that does want to do a TED Talk. Um, the thing with TEDx is you will get given a specific time, and you do have to provide your talk ahead of time. Now, I used to be that person that needed to have word for word things planned, written out, timed. But where I've moved back into, which is more my natural state actually, is to not have that and to be able to go with the flow and respond to the audience. In TEDx, I didn't have that luxury. I had to provide my talk ahead of time. I had to make sure it met the rules and the criteria. To get through the application, I had to make it very clear, like, how my talk was going to help people and shift people, and how it also fitted with the TED theme. Because to get funding to do your TED event, you have to like get a certain theme signed off. So there was an element of like box ticking that was needed. So I had to craft something that I only had a limited amount of minutes for. I was only given 7.5 minutes. There was a variety of some speakers that had 20, some had as little as 5. I ended up with 7. I think it was kind of luck of the draw. And so I had to take like all this information that I had and all of this like mission and purpose and message and condense that into 7.5 minutes, which was really difficult. So Talk Like TED, the book, shares some really great advice in there around how to do that. And some of the important things are like bringing in emotion. So if you watch my TEDx, I talk about what happened in Hurricane Katrina with the trees. It was incredible what happened. So like getting that emotion in, getting that like metaphor of the tree in to help people see, like really helped to anchor in that message. I shared my research that I'd carried out. So I thought, well, this is another great thing because you're going to potentially have like more left brain and right brain people, like a mixture of left and right brain people in the audience. Although I imagine if they're at a TEDx event, they might be a little bit more creative right brain, but you never know. So by sharing that research and sharing data and stats, that then appeals to more the left brain people, and sharing the stories like the Hurricane Katrina, that appeals to more the right brain people. So that was how I actually crafted that talk. So it was like, what's the story, what's the emotion, what's the data, and how do I like really simplify that into that message and make it punchy and powerful. And then in terms of preparation, like one thing that people I think will be surprised about is just how much practice these things take. You like think about athletes, like they practice, they practice, they practice. It is their priority, it is their life. Like if you really, and this goes for anything, if there's something in life that you really want to achieve, then you need to give it your all and you need to make it your focus and a priority. And I'm not one for sacrifice. I'm not one for like, you should sacrifice everything. But there is an element of sacrifice in terms of your priorities. So when I made that decision that I was doing TEDx, I said to my friends and family, I'm doing TEDx. I'm going to need a huge load of space. I'm an introvert. I'm sensitive. I'm going to need loads of alone time, loads of space, loads of rest, loads of practice. So I won't be coming to family events. I won't be coming to parties. I was in my corporate job at the time. I said, I won't be coming into the office. I'm going to be working from home and like claiming what it was that I needed. So I had that space to practice. And with TED specifically, because that's been the, that's the focus of the question, because you do have to remember your talk, like, why would you not give yourself the best chance to just keep practicing it over and over and over and over? So what I used to do is make sure I had loads of space left on my phone because there were so many videos of me doing TEDx. And I would put my phone up or like on a holder or on a bookshelf, and I would stand in the room and I would deliver my talk to my camera as if I was doing the talk. And I would sometimes do this multiple times a day. So firstly, I was getting used to standing up and talking it and pretending there was an audience there. And then I would then watch it back, or I would listen to the audio of it back, like when I was in the car. So I would like hear it over and over again as well. And then I would think, oh, I could deliver that bit slightly differently. So, loads of time, loads of space, loads of practice, and like the well-being angle was so important. And this was the same for after. And I'm sure loads of you've heard me share this before. There were celebrities at my TED event. And after the event, the organizers arranged a meal, which was like this networking meal with these celebrities. And I said, I am not going. If I'm going to be my absolute best and then rest and recharge, I need to come off that stage. I need to go home. I need to be on the sofa under a blanket. Like if I go to that networking event, that's just going to drain me even further. Like that is not my highest good. And people were like, but there's celebrities there, like you're going to miss out. And I was like, I don't care. I can network another time. Like that is not important. What is important is bigger picture. How do I be my best self to get on that stage? And that was fully knowing that I got off that stage, someone else drove me home, and I could be on the sofa under a blanket eating pizza an hour later. Because I was on at 4
Yeah,
p.m. as well. So I had to wait all day. So I had to really manage my energy, keep my energy up through the day, not eat the sandwiches that they provided us at lunch
yeah.
because I thought if I eat bread, I'm going to crash.
Mm.
Need to find a salad. So the well-being aspect of TED, I feel, is also really important, as well as like how to actually craft the talk.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think you were very clear on your boundaries. You were very clear this is what you want to do. And you did a little research and planned it all. And you made a really good point, because remember you and I were talking when you actually did it about your food consumption, because there are some foods that can give us energy, as we know, and there are some foods that can aggravate anxiety. So the fact is, your body.
Mm.
And I thought as well, water is really important. So the fact is, I know that and you and I talk about this, and the fact that to preparing yourself for a talk, the first few minutes before a talk, not looking at your mobile phone, because all it takes is a message from a loved one, good luck,
Mm-hmm.
or something happens, or you get distracted by Facebook, and that's in your head.
Mm-hmm.
And none of us want that when we're about to go and do a talk. So to actually prepare yourself, you've got the hydration, nutrition, to give your body the best chance, and the boundaries. Yeah, that's really, 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 really key. Just the other thing I thought about as well is, obviously your talk was a little bit less, but I know some people that do talking like for days and days. I know they talk about warm-up exercises. So some people do warm-up exercise. I think it's more sort of in the singing side of things, especially. I'm sure Coral knows a lot of that. But people do that even in the shower in the morning. They'll just do some vocal exercises. So did you have to do anything like that? I know obviously, I mean, you've got to protect your voice anyway,
Mm.
and you talk online as well. Is that something that you find useful, or not something that you do?
Yeah, so something that I did, so this was actually for the first event I ever spoke at. I was invited to speak at this women's empowerment event, and there was meant to be 50 women, and the tickets went on sale, and they ended up opening up 50 more tickets. So there was actually, so I was preparing for 50 women, which was really big for me at the time. I hadn't probably spoken to more than 20 people, maybe even 10 at that point. Like it was a really big deal for me at the time. And then when I arrived at the event and I saw it was so packed with women that there was women standing around the edges because all the seats were taken. It probably broke like fire procedures because they were so crammed in. So I didn't actually know there was 100 until I got there. And when I was preparing for that, one thing that I did was I just did loads of singing. So when like I've naturally got a quiet voice anyway, and lots of people say like they love my meditations because I've got a calming voice. But it's like, okay, well now I need to command a room. How am I going to do that? So something that I just intuitively felt to do was I started to get singing lessons, and that in itself gave me the ability to like um change like my pitch, my tone, and just like play with those different sounds. But also like just being at home, and I used to have a really long kitchen diner in my old house, and I would stand at one end and I would sing as if I was singing to the back wall and like project my voice. So yeah, that was just something I intuitively did.
Mm.
And then I will sing if I'm like driving to a speaking event, I'll sing in the car as well, and it just
Yeah.
kind of opens that up and it gets me
Mm.
more in a project my voice type mode because I do a lot of
Mm.
work online as well, so I'm not necessarily in that kind of project my voice mode. So I do have to switch into it. But yeah, singing has really helped.
Yeah, it's something I hadn't really thought about. It wasn't until they were talking about it, I suddenly thought that's interesting, especially as these people talking like, like yourself, I talk about a lot. I've never thought about it in the teaching aspect. I've either got my indoor voice or my megaphone outdoor voice. I've got nothing in between.
Mm.
So, but I thought that was a really interesting point. So yeah, thanks for sharing that. I didn't know you did all that. I think sometimes there's all these things that people do and you don't realize exactly what the preparation work is behind it. And again, what works for you might not work for me, and vice versa. So it's always good to hear these things and try these things.
Yeah, definitely. And what I think as we're sort of coming to the towards the end of this conversation, I think what one of the biggest things that's kind of coming out of this is like just how many things we can do to help us be our best selves. And it's not just about the black and white of tell me how to create a talk. And I get that a lot of people come to me and say, how do I do a TEDx? And I'm like, it's actually this and this. It's the crafting, it's the planning, it's the organization, it's the well-being, it's the energy management. It's actually all of it. It's not just here's your words and here's how you put them into a talk. Like it is so much more holistic around that. And what I will say to anyone listening is like, if you feel that calling and like your body will tell you. So when I got through to TEDx, my whole body lifted. So even though I had a bit of like nerves and anxiety and I was freaking out a bit like, oh my God, I'm doing this, my body like had this yes, like this is for me feeling. So if you're listening to this and you have that feeling, like you need to follow that feeling over all else and open up that channel for yourself and protect that energy of that and that thing and have your boundaries up so that you can do that. Because if you're feeling that, then it is meant for you. Obviously, if you're listening to this and you're like, oh no, that just feels constrictive and no, like I'd rather be on a podcast or don't get me wrong, I love podcasts or, like then that's cool. Like whatever it is for you that gets your message across, that connects
Mm.
you to a community in some way, like follow that inner knowing because that will guide you to where you need to be.
Yeah, I agree. I think going back to what you said about practice, I think that's where it can help manage the nerves. As long as all the preparation work that you mentioned as well. But if you keep practicing, whether it be in front of people and getting feedback from them, or what you do with the video. And I know I video quite a lot, because you can get so much feedback. You can see things yourself. And I know when I did the talk with the people in our small little groups, they gave us feedback, and I said offer, and I had no idea I said that word. But however, if I'd videoed myself, I would have picked it up. So I think it's really important to get feedback from people and practice, and also know the subject you're talking about, know it inside out, especially if it's a talk where people are going to ask you questions, because you could then handle objections, because there are so many different types of talks. Maybe it's just you talking, the audiences get an opportunity to interact. But I think a lot of nerves come from the questions people might ask if there's an opportunity at the end. And that's where I say, know your subject inside out. And the one thing I learned that really helped me, especially when we had objections coming from consultants, which way more intelligent, and yeah, especially if they're in a certain speciality area, I learned a way, if they ask me a question, like it can be for anybody, and it really, really helped me. So I want to share it in case it helps anyone else. Is if they ask you a question, you can always ask a question back. Go, well, what's the reason behind that? Oh, okay, that's an interesting question, because it gives you a few seconds for your brain to go, oh, crikey, how am I going to answer that? Or you could say, just, yeah, ask a question back. My brain has gone frazzled. There was another one as well. I was going to ask a question, get deflect and get, but yeah, that really helped. And sometimes people would ask questions because they just want to be a bit of a tinker, and just because maybe they've had a very challenging day and they're having their lunch, or generally people want to learn. So sometimes, yeah, just ask the reason behind that question. Or in my case, it was like, have you got any patients that would be suitable for that? Or, what's the experience of that product? Any sort of question. And sometimes you can ask the audience and go, has anyone got a reason for that? And the worst comes to worst, if you don't know, it's really honest to go, do you know, I don't know. It's a really good question. I'll get back to you. How about I get back to you in an email, and you get an email address. So yeah, that's the one thing I know. When I started talking, it was my biggest concern that they'd ask me something, and you just ask a question back, or ask them a reason behind it, and not to be afraid to go, do you know, I don't know. Because a lot of people, I think, sometimes will just maybe try and answer it.
And that can be quite wobbly, can't it? But yeah, I love that ask it back. That's kind of a bit of a coaching technique as well, isn't it? Like, well, what, I don't know, you tell me. Well, if you did know, what would it be? Like, I sometimes say things like that. I think yeah, that can be really powerful. And like you say, some people ask the question just to be awkward, some are genuinely curious. So yes, like asking that back, I think is great. And just comes back to the vulnerability and humanness again, doesn't it? If you don't know, then then you don't know, or you can find the answer. So yeah, I love that.
I think that I've learned is to find the reason behind the question, because sometimes they ask it and it might be something that came up externally and they actually don't know themselves. They don't understand the reason behind the question. And I think once you understand the reason behind the question, you can then answer it very specifically. And yeah, that helped me quite a lot. And even now, even if I know the answer or know some information to give them, I actually say, what's the reason behind the question? Or lots of it, answer it with an open question. Yeah, it just buys you time.
Which we've actually done that in Pilates, haven't we? I've said, Anna, I can't do this movement this way. And then you say, what's the reason behind the question? And then I say, because I drove somewhere and I've hurt my neck.
Yeah.
I've sat in the car too long. And then you're like, right, okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, we've actually done that in real time.
Yeah, it's obviously a habit, but I think it can help in anything. It can really, really help to understand the reason behind the question. And it could be just they had a blip, concentration. Like if you're talking for an hour, like you have a few minutes where so they could just misunderstood what you said. But I think it can save you so many minutes, especially when you're talking, you're up on a stage and all eyes are on you. It can just give you a little bit of time. So that's the one thing that I really, really learned and helped me with nerves as well. And the breathing, obviously you and I know, and lots for the people, breathing, just even the silence when you're up on stage or if you're speaking feels like forever, but a silence just like can be quite impactful and powerful. And sometimes it can demand a presence. If you're silent, you have people's undivided attention. And yeah, don't be afraid for the pauses, which again buys you time.
You can actually see it in my TEDx. So here's me being vulnerable. at the start, I'm quite fast. And
Yeah.
then I get a couple of minutes in and I slow down and I ask the audience like a reflective question and I stop and I look and you can actually feel it. You can actually
Mm,
like feel the impact. But it's like up to that point, I'm like just trying to get the words out and
yeah.
remember them. And then I stop and I go, and then that's when everything changes. So yeah, if you want to
Yeah.
see that in real time, go watch that and see where that happens.
Oh, but it's good.
Amazing.
It's good that you. Sorry, it's good that you acknowledged it, and then being up on stage, you just had the ability to slow the breathing
Mm.
down. That's awareness of breathing is so key.
I think it
Um,
helped that in the front row there was people like grinning and smiling and nodding at me. And I was like,
oh,
okay, all right, I'm doing all right. That really
oh, I
helped. So
love people like
thank
that.
you to those people.
Yeah, I call them the Churchill dogs. I do that sometimes. I go,
Yeah.
oh yes, but they're the lovely people. They're just willing you to do really
Mm.
well, aren't you? Um,
Yeah, I love that. So we've come to the end of the conversation. Thank you again, Anna, for being my podcast buddy. It has been great fun as always, and we'll have to do another one. So, anyone listening, if you have another topic that you would like Anna to interview me on or to chat on, we can do another one. Just reach out and let me know. Is there anything you want to share, Anna, before we close today?
I just want to say thank you very much for inviting me back again. I really enjoyed it. I've only done 2 podcasts with you, and they've both been with you. But yeah, for me, just practice in talking, and there's different types of talking, so you can be really experienced in one area, and don't be scared that actually it feels really strange in another area that you're not. Yeah, there's different types of talking, and it's okay to feel not okay.
Amazing. I love that. Thank you. And my wisdom, my parting wisdom is it is bigger than you. It is your mission, it is your vision. And if it is a yes in your body, then go do it. So this is your permission. So we'll leave it there. Thank you so much, Anna. Thanks everyone for watching and listening, and bye for now.